Hey, good morning, filmmakers, and welcome to our first seminar of 2023. My name is Mike Sheriff, and I'm the Youth Film Festival's manager here at the Forest City Film Festival. And I'm so thrilled to be here with you today. The title of today's seminar is Learning by Doing, a Filmmaker's Journey. And our special guest is director Arnaud Weissenburger. Arnaud is a French-Canadian filmmaker and a graduate of Ryerson University's film program. Through his many travels, he's developed a great affinity for distinct cultures, something he uses to create stories that focus on identity and belonging. He's directed and worked on over a dozen short films and commercial projects. After premiering at the Montreal Festival de Nouveau Cinema 2021, his thesis film, Paris, Ontario, won the Best Short Film Award at the Forest City Film Festival. In his pre-recorded seminar, Arnaud talks about how creating content as a student filmmaker helped to strengthen his storytelling muscles. He also reveals 5 key values he picked up along the way that proved invaluable for making his short films and becoming a better filmmaker. Arnaud will be joining us after the video for a live Q&A. So as you watch the video, think about what questions you might want to ask him and post them in the live stream chat. Don't worry if you miss anything along the way as you're typing up a question. This seminar will soon be posted on our educators portal at oyff.ca, where you can watch it again and again. So, without further ado, let's roll the video.
Hi, my name is Arnaud Weissenburger, and I am a budding filmmaker. I'm still, I guess, an aspiring filmmaker in many ways, but I'm also an accomplished filmmaker. I've done already a dozen or so short films. I've done a lot of other different projects. I'm well familiar with the medium of cinema, with the medium of film, and most notably, my last major short film was at the Forest City Film Festival and won the top prize, the Golden Oak there. I think that's one of the reasons I was invited here today. And I'm happy to be able to relay some of the experiences I've had along the way. I've only graduated film school a little over a year ago at formerly known as Ryerson University, now called TMU, Toronto Metropolitan, so in Toronto. And so I hope that by discussing my experiences and my filmmaking journey, I can inspire you, but also kind of get you to glean maybe some interesting nuggets of information, some interesting tidbits here and there. And most importantly, I've organized this seminar in 5 different values, 5 values that I think are quite important as young aspiring filmmakers, that I think have benefited me, even if I wasn't necessarily conscious about them before. But as I've reflected on my past experiences, I see how the way I've done things did benefit me, but also, learning from mistakes. And without further ado, I guess we'll start at the very beginning. So I've always had a fascination for cinema. Even when I was very, very young, I would want to go to the movie theater when we would go see family in France. When there's not really much else to do there, we would go to the movie theater, which was nearby, and I was always kind of following the latest releases and trying to highlight the films that interested me at the time and whatnot. But it wasn't really until I was 10 or 11, I can't remember exactly, years old, that I really, really fell in love with filmmaking and not just, watching the latest movies. And that's when I went to a summer camp where one of the activities you can choose from was a filmmaking studio. So obviously a very amateur, as you can imagine, filmmaking studio, This was back in 2011, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And so the cameras that we would be given were flip video cameras. So props to you if you know what flip video cameras are, or if you remember what they are. But you know, they're not too dissimilar in size to an iPhone. So you would really just kind of carry it like this. The camera would be around here. So you could hold it in one hand. Obviously, as you can imagine, in 2011, a thing of this size, you know, not too long after, and it wasn't terribly expensive either. It wasn't particularly high quality, but that didn't matter. What mattered is that suddenly you could, you know, get one of these cameras in your hand, and you could do whatever you wanted with it for, you know, a period of time perhaps, but you could do whatever you want with it. And so I went crazy. That's kind of the moment, not the moment because it's not a moment, but that's kind of like that summer camp when I was running around with that flip video camera was when I started to realize I don't just like watching movies, I love making movies. And because I just had it in my hand, I could do whatever I wanted. I was doing the craziest, most like out there things that I could think of at the time. Didn't matter if it was good. Well, obviously I wanted to be, you know, as good as I could make it, I suppose. But I just wanted to do whatever came to mind, and hopefully grab some of that amateur charm or whatever. So the first value I think that you can glean from this is that I think filmmaking is an act that you should do without restraining yourself, and so value number one is to be shameless. We're all a bit shameful sometimes. We all, you know, sometimes, you know, in life, we can be ashamed of certain actions we've done, or we, you know, can look back at some of the films we made or projects we made, we participated in, and look back at it in with some sort of shame. Maybe, you know, it wasn't particularly well thought out, or it read differently or something like that. But as we are filming, or as we are thinking about filming or creating in some way, we have to put everything aside and just put it all out there. We have to be shameless, because we can't, we cannot have anything, you know, taking us back. We need to put it all out there, and, you know, it might be garbage. That's okay. We can work on that. But, yeah, that's kind of, everything I made back then was absolute, like, filth in retrospect. But that's okay. That's how you learn. And you know, it's fun to kind of just start like that and just do whatever you can think of. But you know, that was then, and then eventually, you know, I kind of started to do as many films as I could. Around the time when I went to high school, you know, with school taking much more time, the only time started to be around summertime. That's kind of when I would be doing short films. But I still wanted to create when it was in the summertime. And I was in a small private school, French private school, where classes sometimes didn't exceed, you know, 10 people. So, you know, you could make friends, but it's hard to, with this few people, to find, you know, collaborators and find people you can really like make films with on the weekends or work with. So my way around that was to try to find ways of making things by myself. And that's when I created a YouTube channel in 2013. I found a way to, you know, record myself, talk about movies, whether it's reviews or top tens, or you know, discussing certain things here and there, or you know, whatever video I was inspired to do. I would kind of do them maybe like once every 2 weeks or once a month. And, you know, these videos weren't particularly great, but, you know, every week I would try to improve. So the first week it was overlong and bloated. Next, I would try to maybe shorten it. And then the next week I'd be like, oh, maybe I'll try to add more jump cuts. And then the following week, oh, it's missing some spice. Maybe I'll take some photos from Google and put them in there and try to move the photos around or something. And then the following week I would try to maybe put sound effects, and the videos would get better and better and better. And with that exercise, I would get better at editing. I learned Photoshop because I had to make my own thumbnails for YouTube. And that actually caught the attention of one of my teachers at school, who was interested in making a video series, kind of a YouTube style video series on philosophers. He particularly did not appreciate. It's in French, but the series was called Philosophers to Absolutely Not Read, or would be the translation. And since he had an audience already, because of his, he was doing some other things on the internet. Where the videos that we ended up making together, we made about a half dozen videos or so, actually kind of were being watched, and that was fantastic. And so I guess the second value I really want to put forward is that you have to create your own opportunities, and you have to create your own chances. They're not, you're not always going to be put in the best situations possible to be the next Damien Chazelle or whatever. But that's okay. You have to work with what you have, and maybe that's more difficult in certain situations, but there's almost always a way. And I can bet that you guys have a lot of opportunities to create things. It just takes one person with an idea, and enough courage to want to make it and to put themselves out there, even if it's going to be terrible. So yeah, find a way to create in whatever form you can, because that might actually benefit you more than you realize. I had no idea that that teacher that we were gonna be partners together on a kind of a comical video series to try to get young people more interested in philosophy. So chances can arise in the most unlikely places, but you have to create your own chances. And it's easier said than done, and you're not going to know that you're doing it necessarily while you're doing it. You're only going to know afterwards. So just keep doing. Guess that's the best way. So then after high school, I went to CEGEP, and for those who don't know, CEGEP is kind of an in-between high school and university that is being done in Quebec. You can do like a 2-year program and get a deck. You can do more and do a technique, which allows you to skip university. I did a 2-year deck in communications. And it was really, really fruitful for me because it was the first time in my life where I was surrounded by classmates, people my age, that were equally passionate about art or about film as I was. That was really the first time. And because before I was really struggling and to find people to talk with, find people to go see movies with, find people to film with, frankly, or at least at school. And so that really was the first time where I started to make, group of friends around filmmaking, instead of just group of friends, period. And it's with those relationships that it became much easier to work on other people's projects, or to get people to work on my projects, or just to discuss, to critique, to do things related to art on our free time, and not things that aren't that, like Super Smash Brothers or something. But yeah, it's really at that moment that, it's really around that time that I'm realizing how important it was for me back then to start creating these groups of friends and these relationships. And that's kind of value number 3, and this is like equally applicable to life in general, but it certainly applies to filmmaking quite a bit, and that is to build strong relationships. These relationships that are going to last, these relationships that are going to make that's gonna make failure feel a lot less bitter, because you have this support system, but also relationships of people you find reliable that can help you out. It goes both ways, right? Well, but that will also bring you on their projects, and maybe that will benefit you in ways you don't necessarily see right away. So it's really it's fundamental to have these relationships and to build these connections. And there's a cynical way around this where it's all networking or whatever, but here it really was just social. And because it's cool to have contacts, but it's with friends that you really make projects, like serious projects with. You don't just get a contact to make a movie with. You make movie with people you deeply admire, or that you really like, or that you really, that you guys connect or something. I was lucky enough to get into, again, formerly known as Ryerson University in Toronto. And I think early on, when I was at Ryerson University, again, I was very fortunate to go into film school. You get a large network of people who speak just like you, who think just like you, who think about film, and that you can connect with the same way that I had in CEGEP. But I started to realize I was starting to go in circles as far as like my creativity. And personally, like, this is an issue that was much more with me than it is for necessarily other people. But I think one of my biggest issues is that at the time I was convinced that good films had as little dialogue as possible, maybe even no dialogue. And but then I start to equate that with putting little effort in screenwriting or in scripts, or in that kind of craft. But it's actually fundamental, even if you have little dialogue, to have a good script that holds its own. So again, doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, but that's kind of the epiphany I ended up having maybe a year and a half into university or something. It's with that film, not that film. It's with these kinds of first few films I was starting to do at Ryerson that I realized that I was stagnating and I needed to evolve. And so that brings me to value number 4, and that is that. It's kind of a general value, but you have to aspire to be better. You have to have, a critical sense of what you're doing, and you have to have the desire to improve yourself, your craft, and all that. It's easier said than done, and it's kind of an eternal quest. But without that desire, you just kind of do the same thing. Or even worse, you do filmmaking without thinking or without reflecting, which leads to very, very boring and uninteresting films, frankly. It's really important to look beyond, to be curious about cinema, not just in the films you watch, but simply in how to improve your craft, in what you can test, what you can glean from, what you can be inspired by. Some of the most annoying short films to watch are those that are just copying others, or that are or sometimes you see films from filmmakers, you feel like they just made the same film again, right? It's really important, I think, to regardless of the result, at least you have to have the desire to improve yourself as a person, as a human being, but also as an artist. And it's with that eternal quest that you will make better films, and that you will make as you evolve as a person and as an artist, your filmmaking will evolve and will improve as a result. And that is fundamental to, I think, the artistic journey. And that you might not be at a place where you're stagnating, but if you are, and even if you aren't, keep that in mind. At the end of film school, you have to make a thesis film. The thesis film is the final challenge, the final exam. It's the equivalent to that. It's the final film. You have a whole year to make it. And it's a very, very important task. It's one you, at least if you're serious about it, you have to take seriously, because it's with the resources that the school gives you, this is the last thing you're going to be able to do over there. And so I got the chance to write and direct my own. It is the film that played at Forest City Film Festival, Paris, Ontario. It is a film, though, that when I first got into the project, I realized, I have to really make sure to not make the mistakes I did before, because the film I did before, so the third year film, the set of that film was a complete disaster, and I didn't want that to happen again. And so the reason why, the thing about that third year film is that, it felt like things were going smoothly, but when we actually got to set, we realized nothing was working. Shots took way longer than we thought to plan and to coordinate. Shots were not particularly we weren't getting the shots that I had drawn on my storyboards. Unforeseen things, like especially in regards to weather, happened, and we had to deal with lots and lots of things. The film, regardless of how it turned out, the set of the film was a complete disaster. And I didn't want that to happen again. And the reason why that set didn't work at all is because we weren't able to communicate. On the set, we were talking. We weren't getting anywhere. And these discussions between ourselves, they weren't working, in large part because we should have had these conversations before the set, before we started shooting, whether I had realized it or not. And so these conversations, are it's so important to talk with people, make sure you're on the same page, that everything is clear on their end, and that you practice before the film. And that is really value number 5, which is maybe the most important value here. It is the most important thing, I think, in making a film, or in making a film that you're proud of, that can be complicated. It is planification and communication. Those two things are key. It is so important to make sure that you are ready, that everybody else is ready when you get on that set, so that you don't waste anybody else's time, and just so that things go smoothly, and you're not just blindly improvising and pretending to know what you're doing when you're not. And so communication and artist communication, we are communicating ideas through audio and visual mediums, but we are communicating things, whether that is emotion, whether that is idea, and that's what film is. But it's also what your set is, and if you cannot communicate properly on your set, how do you wish to communicate through a film? It's as simple as that. It's fundamental to be able to have a set that functions, that works, where people are efficient, where people can. There's always going to be unforeseen things, certainly, but a large part of good communication is good preparation, and we spent a lot of time preparing our thesis film. We had a very long casting process. We had a lot of rehearsals. We had rehearsals where we were really planning the choreography of the camera. We had a lot of planning sessions with all the heads of different departments, and all that kind of all those kinds of things, because it was really important to me that the set went well. And sure enough, the set, we finished, on time. Everybody had a good time, and it was a very good set. We certainly had a few unforeseen things, but we were able to finish on time, and we were very happy with the shots we were able to get. The first time we did one of our most difficult shots, we celebrated, because even if we had more than half of the film left to do, because just being able to do that difficult shot meant that we were able to do the rest of the film. It was a good time, and it went quite smoothly in post-production as well. That's another thing. If you're prepared enough, and your shooting goes smoothly, post-production goes smoothly as well, in theory at least. So at the moment I'm an editor in a post-production house in Montreal, and I'm continuing to develop my craft. I still have a lot to learn. I haven't made a short film since Paris, Ontario, but I've been writing, and I hope to be able to make some short films shortly. We'll see what happens, but either way, that was my seminar. I hope I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you were able to glean some neat little things from my experiences, even if they're not from one of the big name directors out there. I think they are still valuable to people your age who are still trying to find their voice in a certain way, or at least are trying to find guidance in knowing how to get into film, in as vague as that sounds. Great, thank you.
Oh, what a great informative video we all just watched. And I'd like to welcome to the show Arnaud Weissenburger.
Hi, pleasure
Arnaud.
to be here.
Great to have you. Yeah, that was such a great video, chock full of great advice and a lot of actionable tips. And I just want to remind the viewers watching that if you have any questions for Arnaud, be sure to pop them into the live stream chat so I can pass them along to him. But one of the first, I'll open up the questions just with asking you, where are you coming from right now, Arnaud? Whereabouts are you right now?
Right now I'm in Montreal. I'm at work. I currently work at Mel's in their post-production offices. So I'm working on some film synchronization right now. So film, like literally pellicule, like the material film. So films that were shot on film, and then of course they need to be synced up manually. They can't be synced up automatically. So that's what I'm working on right now.
Oh, terrific. So you do a number of things in terms of, so you're a director, you do like post-production work, stuff like that. Is there a particular role that's one of your favorites in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always had a knack for directing, and that it's my favorite thing to do. As difficult, as demanding, and as high pressure as it can be, I just love being able to contribute, to have like a perspective on certain things, and to be able to manage a team. That's always something that I've particularly felt at bay in. Obviously, directing is not a particularly easy job to come across either, and it's a very demanding job, so it's not something you can do all the time 24/7. So you have to be able to do other things as well. And what I like a lot about editing, for instance, and same for writing to a certain extent, is that you have a say in the creative process or in the storytelling process. Those tend to be the big three kind of storytelling crafts of the film industry: screenwriting, directing, editing.
Right. Right. So yeah, the trifecta, as they as they call it. So, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, like we mentioned in the introduction, and you talked about in your in the video, your short film Paris, Ontario, won the Best Short Film Award at the Forest City Film Festival. I just wanted to ask, what was it like seeing your short up on a big screen like that and getting recognition at a film? And a follow-on question to that was, how important are film festivals to an aspiring director's growth and learning?
Yeah, it definitely. I mean, it felt great. It's very enriching to see the response that people have to the film, both negative and positive, and try to see where how the film hit with certain people, where things played well, where things could have played better. So that all felt very good. And of course, I'm particularly happy that the Southwestern Ontario community seemed to enjoy the film quite a bit, because that's where we shot. And as somebody who isn't from the region, I'm glad that at least the community there could enjoy kind of my contribution to that. And then as far as film festivals go, I mean, I've always been a film festival nerd, and I love going to film festivals and really trying to explore and see a bunch of things there. And there's a lot of great discoveries you can make at film festivals. And having a film play at multiple film festivals is just an incredible feeling. It's you feel a lot of recognition, but it's also just like getting to talk to the other filmmakers and not just being part of the audience. Is just really it's film festivals is important, not just for the accolades or for having the laurels or being able to brag to your friends. It's more so like you're feeling like you're part of the bigger community.
Right.
You get to talk to other people who are more or less on that level, I suppose.
Yeah.
And build your network, and not just in a kind of networking is important kind of way, but also in a like, okay, I'm gonna be making some great friends there,
Yeah, yeah, good point.
So yeah.
No, those are really good points, and that you mentioned something there about building a network, and it's really important, I think, to emphasize this. This is very much a relationship-driven industry, and a lot of times you'll end up working with people that you bump into at various places like film festivals or other filmmaking events. One of the things I was wondering is, what are some good places? Are there other good places you could think of, like outside of a film school or a high school, as a lot of our people watching today are in that environment, to meet other filmmakers or other creatives? Is there anything in particular you can suggest to people to get themselves out there to meet other people?
Oh, there's a lot of different options, and especially with the internet nowadays, there's a lot of communities online where people just kind of meet up that maybe wouldn't have met up in if it were real life. One thing I can suggest is just trying to find whatever like local community television station or something of that sort that you have in your town or city. I used to live in Boston when I was in high school, and one of the best experiences I've ever had is going to the local or kind of suburb. We didn't live in Boston proper. We lived in one of the other towns next to it. So the community television station of that town.
Okay.
And at first I would kind of go there once a week. There was a bit of a program for young people, and we were only 3 to have joined. We were a very tight-knit kind of group. And then I started just coming all the time, and I went there. When the summer vacation came, I ended up going there like basically every single day. And I had a kind of an unofficial internship there. So I just kind of started showing up, and then they started to show me everything they had. And I just learned a bunch of stuff there just because I was enthusiastic and just kind of went there, and I met a lot of people there. So yeah, just trying to get out of your bubble a little bit. And, television is not, it's not movies, it's not auteur cinema or whatever, but it's all related, so
Yeah.
it's you get to see a lot of people and know about anyways, that's kind of an experience that comes to mind. There's millions of options,
Right.
like
Yeah.
maybe not millions, but there's definitely at least dozens.
Yeah. How old were you when you were doing when you kept going to the station day by day?
I was 14.
You were 14. Okay.
Yeah.
For maybe the more introverted in the crowd, like online, is there anything in particular online, like good forums that you can suggest? I don't want to put you on the spot, but. I put you on the.
I mean, here's the thing, right? I'm an introvert, and it's difficult for me to get to. It's difficult for me to put myself out there sometimes and
Right.
to talk in crowds and that kind of thing. So but when you're really passionate, when you're really dedicated, you
Yeah.
have to make the effort to really get out there. There's a limit to what you can do online. There's definitely communities for screenwriting, for more tech related communities of
Right.
whether it's post production or camera or whatever. But you have to kind of get out there and shoot or create some things with other people. So there's a limit to that a little bit. So I would just, if you're more introverted, yes, like you can look up some communities and people you can build communities with and be friends with online, certainly. At the same time, I would encourage trying to find a little program or find a group of maybe I don't know, like a club that your high school is offering related to cinema or something like that, and just try to make friends. Like I was in a very small, I don't know if I can't remember if I mentioned this in the video, but I was in a very small high school. I did mention this, a very small high school, right? With very little people.
Right.
And I wasn't very lucky in that kind of like the nerds of our high school was more dedicated to video games, and there wasn't really anybody into films I was. Mm. So I was trying to get them to do a few projects here and there and trying to teach them the basics of, you'll be the sound guy, I'll teach you the basics of sound that I know, or something like that. But it wasn't all that simple, and I didn't really have the occasion to. Like a lot of the big filmmakers, they keep on saying, me and my friends in high school, we would make films every weekend. I didn't really have that experience. I couldn't really have that experience. So I tried to find my way around it. And that's what it is, that if you're dedicated, it's easier said than done. And just like, ask around, ask your parents if they know anything, ask your teachers, your favorite teachers, if they know anything. Like I said, one of my most fruitful relationships when I was in high school was with a teacher.
That's right.
Interestingly enough, right? Yeah. So, these can be more, or another little thing. I tried to like get myself out there and film like the concerts of high school, like the music club or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
Or like try to, and that would give me some practice, right? Yeah. So things like that.
No, that's great advice there. Yeah. And you just made me think of something. As there's a long-standing debate among directors over the benefits of attending film school or learning by doing, like getting out there and doing on your own. I was wondering if you could briefly, because you seem to have both feet in both worlds. What would you say? Like, where do you come out on that debate? And are there any sort of intangible benefits that film school might provide? Or because I know a lot of it, like people watching today might be thinking, am I going to go on to film school after I graduate? Do I need to? I wonder if you could make some comments on that.
what I have to say about film school is that a lot of the arguments I hear against film school kind of point to certain like really big name directors like Quentin Tarantino or Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul Thomas Anderson attended USC or UCLA, or one of the two, and like I think dropped out in the first week or month or something like that. That's kind of like the film equivalent to saying Bill Gates dropped out of university and worked in the garage. You know, like, yes, that's technically possible. It's just, but are you that level of genius? You know, I would like to be that level of genius, but I know I'm not. Like, unless you really think you're a Tarantino, which odds are you're probably not. I'm sorry to say that. Sorry to break that to you. Like maybe 3/4 of the most notable directors working today, and frankly, most industry professionals that are fairly high ranked up in the field have gone to film school. It's at this point it's the norm. They might not be like vocal about it, so you might not know that they do, but they've been to some kind of film school. You can just like assume that. It's not that film school is technically 100% necessary on your path, but it's such a useful tool. In that you have 4 years where you have almost unlimited resources. Or at least you can do whatever you want with the resources given to you, where you have, you know, people that are in your same field that are in theory just as passionate as you are, and you can build a lot of these relationships. It's kind of like it's basically extra fuel you can put in your rocket before takeoff.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And you might not need that extra fuel to go to the moon. But like it's gonna give you a lot more safety, a lot more. It's just more resources, you know. Like it's much easier to kind of take off, I guess.
Yeah.
It would be like again, you don't have to, but if you're serious about, if you know for sure this is the field you want to go in. The industry you want to go in, you don't have to be a director, right? But if this is for sure the field you want to go in, like I think film school is you have to at least try. You know, every serious filmmaker that I meet right now that are more or less at my level or just like still are getting their short films out there, they're usually from one of the top universities, film schools from Montreal or Toronto.
Okay, yeah. And Paris, Ontario, that was your thesis film, right? Was that your like third, fourth year at like what year would that have been done when you were at Ryerson?
Yeah, that was my thesis year, my last year at TMU, formerly Ryerson University.
TMU, right?
And that's a film that took a whole year to kind of from conception to final product, and then we're still kind of like working on getting it out there. So that's just so that was a big labor, and on top of that, you know, having to do it during COVID and all that made things a lot harder. But yeah, so that was the last what I did in my last year. Yeah.
Right. Now, do you think you would have done Paris, Ontario, like independently? If say you hadn't been, would you have had the resources to do it? Like, I'm not sure if does the school provide you? Is there any sort of budget or budget savings that having the school provides, like in terms of equipment or crew?
Well, I mean, we went a bit over budget due to COVID expenses.
Oh, okay.
If I had to do this film like outside of the school without and if COVID was not a thing, it would have probably cost us twice the budget we put into it. Obviously, you know, like school is expensive, so right, but like if you're talking strictly about the film, I would say at least twice, because like we had our cameras for free, you know, we had a lot of equipment, and those things can add up. Those things can cost a lot if you want like good cameras. So we did that. And then if we had to do this film outside of school with COVID, it would have been like maybe triple the budget or something like that. I don't know. It would have been a nightmare. And also just another side note is that like, and the film wouldn't have turned out the same. Like I knew who to contact. I knew who to be like, okay, I want you to be my DP. I want you to be, you know, on the electrical or gaffer or whatever. I want you to be my my editor, blah, blah, blah. I knew who to talk to and contact, and that might have been a lot harder if I hadn't gone to school. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's a big factor too. And yeah.
Okay, no, that's really interesting and good points. Now we're mentioning budget. I mean, a lot of students watching this might be thinking about like putting together their very first short film. Maybe they've got an intention to enter one of our youth film festivals this year. If you're working with a very small budget, which I imagine a lot of people will be, where do you think the money would be best spent? Is there any particular area? Like if you had a few bucks to throw at something, would it be like equipment, or if you had to pay for a great location, or if you had post-production bells and whistles to put in? Where do you think that money would be best spent?
I would say. If you have like very, very little money, I would try to make a film with no money and just wait to see kind of if an emergency happens or if something goes wrong, like use that money as a parachute.
Like a contingency fund or something.
Yeah, pretty much. Because you're going to make a lot of mistakes. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to pop up that you just didn't know to look out for, even though a seasoned filmmaker would have expected them. And that money you can use in that department. And when you're very young, when you don't have a lot of resources, and you can't really pay for much, it's really best to just say like, hey, get your best friends or your most reliable friends and be like, hey, let's try to make a no budget movie together. I need an actor. You'll do, and like you have you might not have acting training, but you have the right physical profile for the role or something like that. And it's not all about when you have very little or no money. It's not all about the money either. It's about how much time you spend on which resources or which. So I would say like obviously learn as much as you can and be as prepared as you can. The more prepared you are, the more money you're going to save, and then just knowing things like that sound is essential. Like having good sound and trying to edit and mix it properly is essential to having your film feel professional, things like that. And your film's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be professional level color grading and sound design or whatever, but you can at least go into your film with that in mind, have a bit of a critical sense, and try to try to figure out what needs fixing. And what was I going to say? And knowing what resources to focus on. I was going to conclude with something and I can't remember, so I'll conclude it there.
No, that's great. That's lots of good advice.
Right. Okay, I remember. Yeah, when you're that young, unless you have like really rich parents, which good for you, it's probably best to just like spend as little money or no money on your projects and just see how creative you can be with them.
Yeah,
I know it's kind of a hard pill to swallow because you want to be, you want to do a gangster movie or a sci-fi film or something like that. But trust me, if you did have the money to do whatever vision you had, it's going to be like kind of sad to see that money go down the drain for whatever you're gonna. So just try to do the most with what you can, and yeah. No,
that's great. One other thing I was going to ask. how much do you think about the audience when you're doing a film, like balancing what you personally want to say as a creative with perhaps what you want audiences to take away for this? So how do you determine balancing that your own personal point of view that you want to put out there with audience expectations, or is that even a consideration for you as a director?
I think for films, for your own films, you should only consider the audience when it comes to the general comprehensibility, or if your film is relatively easy to follow, or if your film can be followed at all. Like your film, whatever you're saying, it can be controversial, it can be ambitious, it can be a little out there, but if you at least have a film that you can follow, where you don't confuse the audience, then that's kind of where taking into account the audience is important. I think there's a lot of really, really great films that aren't there to please the audience, but at least the audience isn't pleased because they understand what the film is, what's going on in the film. The worst case scenario is when audiences cannot understand the film, or where obviously you have to put the audience to work a little bit. There's a lot of audiences that were complaining about how Nope was hard to understand, but it's just because those audience members didn't want to put in the work. So there's a great quote from Cousteau, no, not Cousteau, from Cocteau, sorry, Jean Cocteau, who somebody tells him, the audience didn't like your film. He said they didn't like it. They were alone in that. So you don't just make your film for the audience. You make it a little bit for yourself. And if you're making it for yourself, and you find what you're making to be genuinely interesting, then normally, as a human being, if you as a human being find it interesting, then the audience will also find it interesting.
Right.
And then of course, making films that are personal, or that are coming from your own perspective, will generally make for if you're coherent enough in your thoughts, will generally make for an interesting film. It kind of reminds me of there's a Bo Burnham skit in his Inside Outtakes or something like that, where he kind of says, you have to be yourself. And if that doesn't work, be someone else. If you're fundamentally uninteresting, or in a kind of unchangeable way or something. So obviously you have to try to make yourself as interesting as possible. But generally, if you're it's kind of a blunt way to say it, but if you're an interesting person, people will also be interested.
That's great. That kind of dovetails with something else I wanted to ask you about. For a lot of young creatives, not just young creatives, but any creative, it can be quite intimidating to put work out there, and a lot of times we're gonna fear what feedback we might get, what possible criticism or critiques that we might get. Do you have any tips for how aspiring directors and filmmakers would be, how they should look at feedback and criticism? Is there a specific way that you do it that takes that edge off of it that all of us we can have sometimes?
Yeah, taking criticisms is always difficult, and it's always gonna. You might tell people, oh, don't worry, I know I'm not gonna take it personally. I'm not gonna, but you're always gonna take it a little personally.
Yeah,
and that's normal, because you've put a lot of work into something that is theoretically, you're putting your perspective out there, your point of view out there, sometimes even your story out there. And if people don't appreciate it or find it boring or find it, you're going to take it personally to a certain extent, right?
Right, yeah.
And, I've not been in this situation yet, but I cannot imagine how difficult it must be to make like a film you're pouring your heart out into and having like a below 60% on Rotten Tomatoes or something, like that must be heartbreaking. But I remember when I was 13, I started the YouTube channel I talked about in the video. And the first video I did, I wanted to make like a movie review. So I went out like Thursday night at the opening night so that I could be as early as I could. I worked on it almost the whole day Friday. So the next Friday, I edited it and all that, and I posted it. And then, and I wanted to get some feedback from my parents, and they were very, very, cautious about it. They were like, "Oh, you've done a good job. There's a lot of there's some energy in it." And then eventually it came to the criticism. It was like, okay, it's way too long. Like you didn't cut it down, and your jokes don't land. And it was like I was fighting back against that. I was like, what are you talking about? Videos don't have to be 2 minutes long. They can be longer than that. Yeah. I think it's funny. What are you talking? And like I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready yet. But I think the more you make, the more you're mature about it, the more you're critical of yourself, the more you can take in others' feedback. Yeah. Like I have, I have gotten some feedback about even my latest film, Paris, Ontario, and even some negative reviews, and I've taken them. I've taken them even with interest, and I'm like, okay, let's see what this perspective is, and I'm gonna see. Maybe I will disagree with them, or maybe I'll be like, oh, that's a good point. And that's interesting that perspective wound up to that opinion. And you just kind of have to take it, as maturely as you can. It's never going to be easy, but you just have to be as understanding as you can, even if the person on the other side might not be like, might be a little blunt or maybe even dismissive. You still have to kind of take it with the audience is king, and you have to take their point of view as mercifully as you can.
Yeah, no, that's excellent advice. And I'm just noticing the time here. We're just about wrapped up. We got a couple of minutes left, which is a shame because I'd love to keep chatting with you, Arnaud. That's a lot of great stuff that we're covering here. Is there any last tips or advice that you'd like to pass on before we sign off?
I mean, you guys already have those 5 values I put up there. Anything else? I would say like, especially if you're a little gung-ho and very, very kind of determined to be a director, or like you have a director or some actors that you really admire and be like, oh, I want to be like them. I would say try to detach yourself from that idea a little bit for 2 reasons. Number one, just because like, nobody is going to be the next whatever director because that director has his own perspective, right? Yeah. If you want to be a director, that's fine, but you got to be yourself. You got to create your own. There wasn't a Safdie brothers before the Safdies. Yeah. Now, but they put themselves out there and people liked it, and now they're the Safdie brothers. Right. And a lot of people appreciate them. And also because it's better to just stay open mind about what you want your career path to be. I mean, obviously we all have ambitions, we all have big goals, but there's a lot of people that go into film school thinking I want to do this. And then later on, through all their experiences, through all their projects, they wind up changing their mind because they've dabbled into other fields, and that they might actually find more interesting or stimulating in a lot of ways, whether that's the camera department or the sound department, the post-production department, or even when it comes to managerial duties on set, whether that's the assistant director or the camera, not the camera, the assistant director, the assistants. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking. The script supervisor, things like that, or producing, or So there's
so many hats to wear.
Keep your mind open to different career paths, to different projects, to different and this is a bit of a last hard pill to swallow, but even keep in mind other career paths. Like, I don't want to, if you feel like you're in film school and you're just not all that stimulated about anything, and you see other people, or you're not all that motivated, maybe there's a few people in film school that realize, hey, I thought I was passionate about this, I thought I had a knack for this, but at the end of the day, maybe this isn't for me, and that's okay. I'll just do something else that I'm also very interested in. So just keep an open mind, and even if you don't get the ideal career path, or or things don't go exactly the way you plan, one thing that is untouchable is your appreciation for cinema. No matter what happens, you can still appreciate cinema and watch films and talk about them and have debates about them. Yeah. So that will always stay the same.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, on behalf of everyone that's watching, I just wanted to thank you, Arnaud, for sharing your filmmaker's journey with us. It's been great, and it's gone by so quick. I seriously wish we had more time to chat with you, but this was fantastic. Thanks so much. And
thank you.
Yeah, and for all the filmmakers that are out there watching, I just wanted to give you a quick reminder that we're now taking submissions for the 5th annual Forest City Youth Film Festival and the 2nd annual Ontario Youth Film Festival. So you can learn about the categories of short films that we're accepting, the competition rules, and all the important deadlines by visiting each film festival's Film Freeway page. So simply go to filmfreeway.com, click the Browse Festivals, and enter Forest City Youth Film Festival or Ontario Youth Film Festival in the search box that appears. And be sure to follow both of our festivals on our social media channels to stay up to date with the latest news, seminar announcements. We've got a bunch of great ones coming up in April that you don't want to miss, and other exciting filmmaking events. So that's it for today. Thanks so much for watching. Now go out and film something amazing.